response from the minister on the eviction debacle. Minister?
Well, I don't like the way you characterize it. I'm not really going to respond because I don't think that I wish. Yes, yes.
To the eviction.
I don't wish to sort of, be
situation.
tit for tat, and I don't normally put people's personal information into the public domain, but I think that it's important that there be some clarification about what was asserted against the corporation. Let me just preface my remarks by saying that I would characterize myself as a hands-on minister, and by that I mean I actually go to the Bermuda Housing Corporation board meetings on a monthly basis, and on those odd occasions when I cannot, I get all of the board paper and I read it. And so to put this whole story into context, no one in this country gets evicted for arrears. You hear what I say?
Yes, sir.
No one in this country gets evicted from the Bermuda Housing Corporation's perspective for arrears. Now, that's not a Burchism, and I brought some statistics to justify what that statement. We have 339 people who are in arrears, clients of the Bermuda Housing Corporation, as of this moment, who are in arrears, to the tune of $2.1 million. Now, that's over a lot of years, okay? That's over a lot of years. But we're an agency that helps folk, and so therefore, you will not see us. I mean, if you look at this particular occasion, evictions from the Bermuda Housing Corporation are rare and few and far between. And that is for a reason, a specific reason, that we are in the business of helping folk. But people will also know that I do not tolerate abuses of the system. And that's not just me. What that does, it prevents us from maybe being able to help the next family. And so you don't go from 1 month of arrears to court to eviction. That's not the timeline. Okay, so when you get to an eviction and the immediate accord, we are at the end of a lengthy and long process. And in this particular case, over a number of years. And a number of false starts. And how we get to be able to accept 339 people with $2.1 million in arrears is that each one of those people have a payment plan. Now, in many instances, some of those people are never going to pay off their debt. It's just not possible within the income that they generate. But the reason why no action is taken against them is because the payment plan that they have that is applicable and suitable and manageable for them, they adhere to. And so they are on a payment plan where they pay, if it's $50 a week in addition to their rent, over and above, towards their arrears, then we take no action. It's when you refuse to participate in that process and you then are gaming the system that then you're not going to find a whole lot of favor with me, and I'm not going to, go in the media and put it out. You give me license to at least respond on behalf of the corporation. And so that's the context in which I'd like to sort of address the situation at Princess Street. And I'm not going to put all of her business in the street, but I can tell you that for us, a couple of things that are inaccurate, and there's one that is accurate, and I'm going to make an appeal as a result of this outreach today. The amount of money that is in arrears is, in fact, $17,000. The period of time that she's been in arrears has been and it began in 2003. There have been at least 4 occasions when we've been at the brink of eviction, and it's been pulled back for a number of reasons. So this is several times at the well. Now, the reason why, and I know there was a fair amount of criticism of the Gulf Stream, and we do have some challenges there, I accept that. But the fact of the matter remains is that it is the facility that we have, and we, in fact, are going through a whole review process of that whole concept, because that's what you want to do. We've had it for about a decade now, and some aspects of it are not working. And most of that is as a result of people who are deciding that they should run the system, and we're not going to have that either. People have to live together, and they have to live together in peace. And so we are looking at all aspects of that. And I, in fact, have a paper that's been produced by the Housing Corporation about going to a new model. And it's not just what they've come up with. What we do is they take advantage of best practice internationally and say, look at how you deal with these sorts of things. And they look at the partners that you have in this whole exercise. And so I guess my real message is that, we will not, if people are prepared to work with us, then we are prepared to work with them. We don't take the view that we're a Coldwell Banker or Rego Sotheby's, where if you don't pay, on your bike. We don't do that. And the evidence doesn't support that we do that. Now, the one request that I would make, because I listened, I watched the entire interview yesterday morning, I think, and one aspect of that interview that caused me to pause, and I've saw some investigations, is that the lady announced that her son had graduated from what I think is the skills development program. People will know that that is something that is very close to me. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we have been, since I came into this job and learned of this program, asked them to go and find all of the people who graduated who did not get employment. And so I'm making an appeal today. Her son should come and find me, because there's some challenges in parks where they cannot, there's some challenges in terms of identifying and being able to communicate and contact him. But I'm asking that he reach out, because our remit is that, and we had this discussion this morning, not on this subject, but specifically on graduates of that program, that it makes no sense for us to train people and then at the end of the training say, okay, now off you go on your bike, go find some work. Now, that doesn't mean that every last one of them are going to work for government, but we have relationships with other landscaping companies in the country who go for work permits, and we have a relationship with the minister responsible for work permits to say to them, we've got a young Bermudian who's keen in this regard and has potential. And in fact, 2 of the last cohort have been hired in the private sector. Now, they'd like to come and work for parks, and I've said to them, that may happen one day, but you got a job. Get that experience, because then you can bring that back to us. And what I'm determined to do is to not have people who were trained even before we came to government have an experience and an expertise, and they're out there on their own trying to find work. Now, there's another aspect of this, too, that is a benefit because this ministry is so huge. In the last cohort, I think it's probably, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess, but it's probably the largest group of young Bermudians, both male and one female, who ain't afraid of heights. Now, everybody I know, including myself, unless it's in one of those metal tubes with the door safely closed and 2 engines on it, hurtling me to a place that I want to go to, I'm not going higher than 3 stories. Ain't happening. And least of all at the end of a rope, to cut down a tree. Now, what we've said to them is that, not everybody can have that skill set, but the fact that we've identified young people who are not afraid of heights, the world almost is their oyster now, in the sense that 2 of them went to the UK to Bournemouth last month and participated and done some of that work in the UK and thoroughly enjoyed it. I talked to them, I asked them, and then I asked them for their Bermudian credentials, because, you can be Bermudian if you're not afraid of heights and swinging off of somebody's tree somewhere. But separate and apart from that, in another area of the ministry, we have just taken over responsibility for, I think it's 13 of the communications towers in the country. And our experience is that we always have to contract that out to an overseas company, because we do not have the Bermudian expertise to do that. And usually it's, I ain't going up that height. But we have that now. And so what we've factored into the research and any sort of RFPs that are put out for any maintenance on towers is that if you're coming into my country to do work, then you must take on 2 or 3 of these young Bermudians and train them. Because we are going to have earn expertise, particularly if they're not afraid, and so there are opportunities for them. And the message that I really want, we're in the business of helping folk. We are not going to evict any family. And let me go further. We as a government, in the last iteration of a PLP government, made the decision and created the policy, and we adhere to it today, that we will not evict families. We will not evict families with children. Now, in these cases, one of the child is underage, and so we won't evict families. We won't put them on the street. And so the option that we have at the moment is a couple of rooming houses. Now, that's not the ideal situation, and I never want Bermudians to be comfortable with that. I want it to be a temporary situation where they're able to catch themselves and get back on their feet, and we will help them in that regard. But we cannot, and I want to make this, we cannot, and I know we've been subjected to a whole pile of criticism about unfeeling and all the rest of it. We will not tolerate gaming the system, because that, first of all, it's wrong. It's our tax dollars that are being wasted, and more importantly, it prevents us from helping other families that are genuinely in need. That's my message.
Was there any way that this process could have waited for this family to find somewhere else?
Okay. See, you're delving. You're delving on it. I mean,
Well, we had to ask these questions.
Yes, I got that. And of course, well, first, yes, I get all of that, and I'll answer every question that you ask me without going too far into their personal circumstances. Ms. Swan said that she had noted since May. That is correct. But the May, she neglected to mention the year, which is 2016.
2016.
We would not, yes.
16?
16.
Okay.
This process started in 2016, and it's had several, you heard her say she went to Wolf, and then Chien, and so it's been in the court system for a long period of time. And so that would mean that the corporation applied, and that's when her arrears would have been $12,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you following the trail here?
Yes,
The reason why it's at 17 is because we've been 2 years trying to fix this in some way or form. Now, the way that this could have been avoided, in my humble opinion, is that if you said, okay, the last payment plan I have, I'm going to adhere to, that sends a signal, and causes a pause at very least in the process, and that's what happened. I know that when the last OBA minister who sat in this chair actually stopped the eviction process, Minister Cannonier. And so this has been an ongoing process, and it's been a pattern of behavior that has demonstrated that I'm not going to play with you unless it's under my own rules. And we cannot have that. It's your money too that's being utilized for this. And so we're at this stage. Now, having declined to go to Gulfstream, the family having declined to go to Gulfstream, they didn't run on the street, they went to family. And in my humble opinion, at my age, that's what Bermudians do, actually. When one of us are in trouble, we go to family first. And so whilst this has been somewhat forced upon them, clearly it's not a bad thing. Families are helping each other. And my message is one of, that we are not unfeeling, we are not heartless, we are not, the facts don't support that.
Financial assistance.
Yes.
Was assisting in the rents until the issue of the overseas surgery at Leahy winning a ticket, and that caused the violation for her to be expelled of that program.
You're asking me to go out of my driveway now.
Okay, that's on your jurisdiction.
I don't know any of those facts, okay. And I certainly am not. I have enough on my plate not to tread in somebody else's area of expertise.
The question just popped up is, could that how it was executed, could that have been avoided?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. We have to operate under the law, And so it wasn't BHC evicting her. The bailiff evicted her. But because it's our property, we're going to go and make sure that, we facilitate that. But we have no authority to say, stop. We would have to go back to the courts. This went through a court process and under court order because, the agreements that had been entered into were not met. The court said, okay, the train is coming into the station. We've tried the best we can, and we've sent the bailiff to effect the eviction. Now, that would have happened 2 years, some time ago, but that process was stopped before you actually deploy people.
What's the status of low-cost housing compared to the need?
We are in the same boat we were in a decade ago. It's almost like deja vu for me being here, and probably the reason why I was sent. And by that I mean that, we have no inventory. And that was the case a decade ago. We came into government, I was made the housing minister, and we had no inventory, so we had no flexibility to be able to move people around. And so what we built, plenty of houses across the country, both for sale and for rent geared to income and various other things. And in the 5 intervening years when we were out of government, 0 happened in terms of housing. And there was a housing period in the country. 0. And so where you're at now is just, you're back to where you were. Does that mean it's a lost cause and it's hopeless? I've never that. And never will I accept that. And so what we've done immediately is, and I'm encouraged by this to some extent, in the sense that every time I have a conversation in the media about housing in the country and explain the whole concept of private sector rentals, where we will enter into an arrangement with a private sector landlord, and we will provide the tenant. We will fix the tenant if they are unsuitable. We will be the renter. You will get your rent on time, and we will give you back your place the way we got it. The only catch to that is we will not pay market rates. And so you as a landlord have to decide, do I want to take the risk? Or, do I want to guarantee my income? And so I can budget for that line item because it's coming. When the day that it's due, it's coming. I can guarantee it. And do I want to guarantee that I can go to an agency and say, this tenant is not playing by anybody's rules? And we will take them out. And we will provide you with another tenant. And so you don't have to go through the court process and all that entails. We are the tenant. The Bermuda Housing Corporation is the tenant. And we will work with the people that are staying in your house to make sure that they understand that we have to live together in peace. And you don't get to, play music at 3 o'clock in the morning, disturbing everybody in the neighborhood and not expect anybody to say anything to you, or that there are not going to be repercussions and consequences. And so as a result of every time I've said that, I've gotten more and more people who've said, I'll participate. And so that's giving us some relief at the moment. But there are a number of projects that we got funding in this year's budget to be able to advance. And we are not necessarily concentrating on sales at the moment because that market is basically flat for affordable housing concept. But we have done some research. And the greatest demand at the moment is for 1-bedrooms, amazingly. I mean, there still is demand for, families, but they are not in the greatest demand. It's for 1-bedrooms, and it's usually for young professionals. If you run away to university and were out of mommy's and daddy's house for, 5, 6 years, you don't want to come back and think, no, I'm not playing on it. But I don't want to, it's too early to start a family and get married, but I do want to be able to have my own space. And so we're looking at a number of ways and means of how we can do that within the limited resources that we have. But there are some success stories in that too. And so that gives us encouragement that we're headed in the right direction. You'll be aware that we built, my numbers are not good now, 32 units at Perimeter Lane maybe? Something in that region. But those are all rent geared to income places. And the concept was that whatever your household income was, a quarter of that would be your rent. And 10% on top of that would be your mandatory savings. Now, I've had some pushback. I had some pushback at the outset that, going out of bank and blah, blah, all of this. But I believe there's a solution to every problem. And so it hasn't gone as it was envisaged. But there have been some marginal successes, and we will announce this fairly soon. There's a couple of families who have graduated from rent guaranteed income and purchased their own homes under a new program at the corporation called, you got me off subject now, man, I can't remember what it is. But what it demonstrates is that because I believe we have to teach our people, and we have to force our people to pay themselves first. And by that I mean we have to force them to save. That, and not for Disney World, not for the new bike. You save for that too, but that's separate and apart from the long terms, the paying yourself first. And by forcing them to do that, you get a whole pile of pushback. And I need it for this and I need it for that. I'm like, no, this is for the future. And so some of these successes we've had is that by forcing them to do it, when they see, hold on a minute, I have a down payment that I've raised myself for my own house. You cannot imagine. First of all, you have a convert. I don't have to force them to pay themselves no more, They got it in one. And secondly, there's this sense of pride and accomplishment, and everything else just comes into the equation. And so, we're doing a number of things, and in addition to that, I don't want to go too far down this road because we haven't quite finalized the arrangements yet. But there's outreach from us to private entities too that are in this space in terms of providing housing, particularly for seniors. And we're at the early stage of a discussion about a new development that will not require necessarily public funding, but we can enter into partnerships with folk where we can provide in-kind support, i.e. architectural and surveying and engineering support, that they don't have to pay for. And that'll be our contribution to public-private partnerships. And we're open and welcome to doing a number of those. And there are a number of those at various stages of the discussion stage at this point that we're about to launch. And there's creativity all around the place. I know that I still am pausing about the loss of Grand Atlantic as, affordable rental accommodation. But the work there has started. Part of the reason for us pushing through Parliament the legislation at the last minute and getting all sorts of pushback and what have you, it's bearing fruit. People were employed the day after the governor signed that act into law. And if you drive up there, they'll start painting the buildings. What you won't see is they've started, repurposing and removing fixed furniture and furniture and fittings in order to be able to build the show units. So it's rolling, and none of that could have happened without passage of the legislation. We'd have been delayed by a year. And so there are a number of things that are coming. But what I guess my underlying message to our people is that for those who can help their fellow man, they should do so, and we're willing to work with them in order to be able to accomplish that.
Minister, can you put a dollar figure on what is low-cost housing? Because we do have a crisis.
Well, what we put what is a dollar figure for low-cost housing on rent guaranteed income. So in other words, I'm old enough to know and remember that I grew up in a time where my parents actually paid a quarter of their income, give or take a couple of dollars, was what the going rate was for rental accommodation. Now, I don't expect that private sector people are going to be able to do that, but I think that, the whole concept of financial assistance tops that up. But in terms of from a government point of view, we are very much headed in the direction of building some more rent guaranteed income, because it is a success story in terms of perimeter lane. In terms of what you create is, yes, it's affordable housing, and yes, it's for people who are, coming somewhat up the rough side of the mountain. But if you provide accommodation at a standard that raises their quality of life, they will rise to it. That place is not a ghetto. And many people say, oh, no, you put that many units on, it's going to be a ghetto. No, we live with them, okay? And they get a knock on the door if they go off the... They've got to learn to live together in peace. And I'm quite pleased with the whole concept of perimeter lane. And perhaps we can replicate that somewhere. I'll give you an example, a practical example. Down at Harborview Village in St. David's. if you drive past there, people may not actually fully appreciate that the original concept for that facility was 2 more buildings on the eastern end of it. And if you drive by there, you'll see that everything is in place. The railing goes all the way down. You know, it's kind of wasteland now because of the prevailing circumstances at the time. We didn't build the other 2 buildings, but the plans are there. Everything is ready. It's just whether that concept will fly. And that's one of the things that we're exploring at the moment.
Minister, we have another situation brewing in Dockyard.
Yes.
That water issue up in
Yes.
Dockyard. Dockyard condominium.
Yes, I read the piece. There are all sorts of errors in that as well. Certainly between Redco and our water section, they are preparing a summary. I am familiar of the challenges that we're faced there, and from a high level. First of all, Burch Island Village is a private entity that is fed and fueled water and supplies from Redco and from Public Works. But they have tanks. And so there are 2 issues really at play here. One is Public Works, shut down the water mains to everywhere, would there be east? Whatever, of Dockyard, everywhere out of Dockyard beyond Westgate Correctional Facility, because we had severe leaks. We were bleeding hundreds of, maybe tens of thousands of gallons of water and could not explain why. And so we shut that down. Burch Island Village, under normal circumstances, should be able to survive from their own tanks, because they should be topped up. They, separate and apart from what the ministry did and Redco did, have their own issues in terms of plumbing. And I said to the chief yesterday, it shows the quality of the Canadian workmanship, because they're the ones who built those places. And so, yes, it's been a rough patch this week. We are, and I'm not sure where it's at, but we have a proposal. The challenge, of course, is always this. Burch Island Village is a condominium organization that is privately owned and should be standing on their own 2 feet. That would be the normal overview if you looked at them. The reality, though, is that the government, i.e. Redco, owned 31 of those units. And so we have skin in the game, if you like. And so and they are strapped for cash as an association. And so they're unable to fully commit to fixing the infrastructure challenges that they face at Burch Island Village. We as a government have decided that, you know what, we cannot allow that to continue, because we have an asset that's going to be worthless too.
And water being shut off.
Yes.
At a certain time of the day is
that is a situation that's regrettable.
unhumane.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I think that you either do that or you have nothing at all.
Okay.
And so they've been trying to manage it, and I'm not sure they got the management quite correct.
Okay.
And so I think some of the criticism is a little bit unfair, in the sense that the reality of the situation, they have problems, and everybody knows they have problems. Mm-hmm. We are at the stage where I'm about to go and ask the government if we can fund the complete repairs of the entire village, all of the challenges that they face, on a loan basis to the Burch Island Village Condo Association, so that, one, we can ensure our own investment, but secondly, we can provide them with a sound footing on which to stand on their own 2 feet. And I'm not sure what the communications internally within the association, like I've spoken to emailed the MP and some of the residents who've reached out, and I'm not sure if all of that communication has got to the full association. But it is an issue that I think some of the criticism is unfair, and I think it's only unfair from the point of view that the full ramifications and circumstances around which what they're currently facing has not been explained to everyone. And once that's done, I think people will get a full idea about the magnitude of the challenge that we're faced. Now, what I have said to the MP for the district is that once I get through the cabinet hurdle and we approve the plan, then I will happily come and have a town hall meeting with Burch Island Village Condo Association, so that we can explain to them, this is where we're at, this is what we got, This is where we're going, and this is how we're going to fix it. Now, be clear that, they are not the only people that are having water challenges. And we are facing, and we're seeing, what we're seeing is, and we've seen over the last 7 days, several mains breaks across the country. The infrastructure's old. And so, if you spring a leak, you actually have to go and follow and try and, well, first you got to know where the pipes are. And that's not always the case, You're talking about legacy stuff. You're talking about wrought iron, cast iron. Where you go? The iron pipes, okay?
Cast iron.
Which you lot don't even know nothing about. That's what was used, and so it's trying to find them and then plug in your leak. But what I can say in the case of Burch Island Village, what we identified yesterday, that there was the major bleed off from the mains going into Burch Island Village was coming from Westgate. And so you got to shut off in order to be able to see, because there are gauges and monitors to be able to see whether you're still bleeding water. So I got off Burch Island Village. If my bleeding stopped, then I know that the problem is prior. And so that's part of what has happened. So I can tell you that Westgate have been cut off, and late yesterday afternoon, everybody that side of Westgate were put back on, and we're dealing with the Westgate challenge by feeding water into their tanks, and they're no longer getting a supply from us until we fix the leak at Westgate.
There hasn't been much rain this summer.
No, there hasn't. But you wouldn't think so from all the trees that are growing around the damn place.
Has the reverse osmosis plants assisting in our water supply?
I did a statement at the beginning of summer. We have actually done a lot of work and had a lot of investment in the water infrastructure in the country. And in fact, I'm going to invite you, all of you. We have a young Bermudian who's the principal engineer in charge of water in the country. Okay. And his name is Tariq Christopher, or Tariq. Anyway, one of those. Anyway, I have never met anybody. He was a trainee a decade ago when I was here. He's now the principal. Trust me. You got a gaps in your broadcast media, he will talk about water until Jesus comes again. Animated and excited, and I tell him repeatedly, I've never met anybody who gets more excited about water. He knows. But having said that, he's entirely in his driveway, and so a lot of work has been done prior to this summer in terms of shoring up some of the storage. There's been a new reverse osmosis plant installed at Tynes Bay, along with a new tank to be able to store water. And you'll see the truckers are going whole hog. You haven't had them on your media saying they ain't been able to get any water. And so there's been wider coordination as well in terms of coordination with Redco, who have their own plant as well, and with BLDC, because we're part of the same ministry. There is some synergy and there's some cross fertilization, and there is some plans for some improvement and expansion. He also is in charge of sewage, and you will know that we pump raw sewage off Tobacco Bay and off Great Bay, and we have taken some serious steps about how it is that we're going to address that whole process of sewage in the country, even to the extent that we are looking at whether we can continue for everybody to have a cesspit in their yard. And so the research and the work is being done. You may find, and I'm not sure if we're going to start this summer or next summer, but we've also been having conversations with the utilities about when they dig up the road to lay pipe, and Balco has a plan to do from, I think, Tynes Bay to Grotto Bay, that we are coordinating that so everybody goes in that hole at the same time, including us, so that you are not faced with the situation that normally goes on around here. Balco goes this week, we pay the road next week, and Telco comes the following week, and we're in a mess. And most of that is attributable to the chief engineer, who's had a real handle on it about how it is that we can coordinate these things, because it saves everybody money. If I share and dig in the hill and filling it back in, and you share and they share and somebody else share, it's cheaper than me going on it on my own. All right?
Two more points.
Sure.
The demand for low-cost housing,
Yes.
is it a result of the economy of today or choices that are being made by people, or a combination of the two?
I think it's a combination of the two, and I think the government, and you see in my speech for Monday? I think the government have to take some steps in order to arrest the challenges that when we put on that marker. I know that there's some criticism of us that we've not yet addressed some important things that were in our platform, but I can tell you that we've been at this for 14 months. We've seen the lie of the land, and we've done some things structurally in order to shore up and get us to a place of stability. What you're going to see in the next term, and it'll come out much of it in the throne speech, is that now it really is the time for action. And I I'm putting on some markers for us in my Labor Day speech on Monday that will really set for us where it is that we're going. And I can tell you that it is not going to be your traditional, normal, run-of-the-mill sort of things that should be done around here. Because if we're going to change the lot of the average Bermudian person and family, we're going to have to do some things differently. And that's going to, and I suspect that will be done with some pain and suffering in some quarters.
For those under the Housing Corporation remit that are struggling,
Yes.
some words of advice.
Well, my words of advice to them is to stay the course. Certainly the 339 families who are in arrears, who have no pressure from us to pay this all off right now, but who have entered into their own agreement with the corporation. It's about personal responsibility. That me and my house can manage X, Y, and are doing so, then that's what you have. Now, if X, Y changes to just X, don't duck and weave. What I'm saying is that we are receptive to the challenges that our people are facing. We are aware of the challenges that talk to us. Don't ignore us. Don't act like, don't give us the finger. And what I'm saying is have the conversation, and they will find a receptive entity and organization that's willing to work with them.
339 out of how many clients?
749. 749.
So that doesn't let you know that a lot of people are struggling?
Yes, it does.
Before you go to that answer, one individual who spoke to me on the side and said that her income has diminished, that she balances her payments right now, and she can't pay her rent, but she has to feed her children, pay her light bill, and that's all.
She needs to have that conversation. She's a tenant of ours. Yeah. She needs to have that conversation. Say my circumstances have changed. I mean, in the case of rent geared to income, it is the household income. So, in other words, if you and your wife are making $1,000 a month together, your rent then is $250, right? If wifey loses her job, and that's half the rent going, right? Half the income. So now your household income is $500. Your rent goes to $125,
So you do work with people?
Yes. But the question is that you actually have to communicate that. I'm not necessarily going to know that wifey lost her job until somebody puts up their hand and say, wifey lost her job. You get me? And so what I get that we're proud.
Yes, sir.
And we don't want to put our business out there.
That's it.
Nobody's asking you to do that. But you must talk to the people who can help you. And what I'm saying is that you will find an open and welcome door to come in and chat. And you put your cards on the table. They're not going to go beyond the table. This is a conversation between you and us. That's where the conversation begins and ends. And we will work with you. And nobody will never know that your rent went from 250 to 125. That's a private conversation. All of those people at Perimeter Lane, I would venture to say that every single family in every one of those units, in identical accommodation, pay 34 different rents.
All those units are full?
I think there's one vacant at the moment that's being refurbished. It was vandalized.
One, two-bedroom unit, is it?
I'm not
The
sure.
majority of these units are 1 or 2 bedroom.
There are no one bedrooms. I think they're 2 and 3s. Yeah, and we're designed specifically for families.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Colonel.
much.
Thank you for
You're
your
very